It is a familiar scene that every Israeli wishes had been relegated to the archives of history. The unbearable waiting, the heated public debates, and the quiet, gnawing dread that grips a nation when one of its own is held captive by forces committed to its destruction. The shadow of October 7th still looms heavy over Israel, a scar seared into the collective consciousness as Hamas terrorists stormed Israeli communities, leaving devastation in their wake and abducting civilians and soldiers alike. Now, as Israel once again contemplates a potential deal to bring these hostages home, the heart of the nation aches with conflicting emotions. Hope for reunion, but anguish over the cost. This is not Israel's first dance with such painful negotiations. From the haunting memory of Gilad Shalit's 5-year captivity to the notorious Jibril Agreement of 1985, which saw 1,150 prisoners exchanged for 3 Israeli soldiers, the precedent is long established. These moments have punctuated Israel's modern history, defining the contours of its strategic and moral calculus. Since the Hamas-led massacres and kidnappings on October 7th, the terror group released 105 civilians during a week-long truce in late November 2023, and 4 hostages were released before that. 8 hostages have been rescued by troops alive, and the bodies of 38 hostages have also been recovered, including 3 mistakenly killed by the Israeli military as they tried to escape their captors. Every Israeli knows that negotiating with groups like Hamas comes with impossible trade-offs. To retrieve the abducted, Israel often releases terrorists, many of whom return to violence, perpetuating the very cycle it seeks to break. October 7th, however, was different. It shattered illusions of deterrence. This time, Hamas's brutality was not confined to soldiers or border skirmishes. It penetrated the heart of civilian life. The abductions were not tactical leverage alone, but acts of psychological warfare, aimed at dismantling Israel's sense of security and forcing it into moral compromise. And so, as the Israeli government approaches yet another hostage deal, the stakes feel excruciatingly high. Israel's ethos is one of unbreakable solidarity. The Talmudic principle of pikwach nefesh, the saving of a life, sits at the foundation of the state's identity. He who saves one life saves the world entire, we are taught. This principle is not a platitude. It underpins Israel's national psyche and shapes its military code of conduct. The willingness to risk much for the return of even a single citizen is not perceived as weakness, but as an essential affirmation of the value of life. Yet, this sacred obligation comes with heavy burdens. For every deal that frees hostages, there are Israeli families mourning loved ones, lost to attacks, perpetrated by those released in such exchanges. The statistics are sobering. Dozens of Israelis have been killed in attacks carried out by Palestinians freed in past prisoner swaps. Each new negotiation forces Israel to confront a grim reality, that the pursuit of life today may exact a fatal price tomorrow. The families of the October 7th hostages now stand at the forefront of this national debate, their voices unrelenting and filled with raw urgency. Rallies, vigils, and impassioned appeals dominate public squares. It is impossible to ignore their pain, just as it is impossible to disregard the voices of those who warn that capitulation may embolden Hamas. The government, caught between these competing forces, must navigate the labyrinthine path of diplomacy, security, and morality. The hostage crisis cannot be viewed in isolation from the broader geopolitical realities engulfing the region. Hamas operates with the backing of Iran, whose fingerprints are visible across Israel's northern and southern fronts. Hezbollah's ongoing rearmament in Lebanon adds another layer of danger, raising the specter of another multi-front war. For Hamas, hostages are not merely bargaining chips. They are part of a wider strategy to shift the balance of power and disrupt Israel's alliances with regional actors. International actors, too, exert pressure on Israel, The United States, Egypt, and Qatar often serve as intermediaries, each with its own interests in brokering a deal. For these nations, facilitating a resolution brings diplomatic capital. But for Israel, such negotiations often reinforce Hamas's belief that its tactics yield results, perpetuating instability. Moreover, the fragmented Palestinian political landscape complicates the calculus. Hamas's power in Gaza stands in direct opposition to the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, further entrenching divisions and diminishing the prospects for any cohesive peace process. In such an environment, hostage negotiations are not merely tactical, they shape the entire trajectory of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. A substantial 74% of the Israeli public says the country should pursue a comprehensive deal to secure the return of all hostages, even if it requires halting the fighting in Gaza, according to a new Ma'ariv poll published in December. Israelis are acutely aware that no military operation, no matter how precise, can guarantee the safe return of every hostage. Operation Entebbe remains the gold standard of successful rescues, but it is an exception in a landscape marked by tragic failures. The haunting memory of Nakhshan Waxman, the young soldier killed in a botched rescue mission in 1994, lingers as a reminder of the perils involved. Thus, Israel is forced to walk a razor-thin line between its ethical imperatives and strategic interests. The current hostage deal, if it proceeds, will likely see the release of Palestinians involved in past attacks against Israeli civilians. The public knows this. Still, the sight of families embracing their loved ones again can disarm even the staunchest critics. And therein lies the complexity of Israel's struggle. Each successful return of a hostage reaffirms the national ethos, that the state will go to extraordinary lengths to safeguard its citizens. But each exchange also plants the seeds of future dilemmas. This is the paradox of Israeli resilience, that hope and peril often walk hand in hand. Yet, even within this paradox, there lies an unyielding optimism. Israel's ability to endure is not predicated on perfect solutions, but on the collective strength to face imperfection with resolve. The hostages, when they return, embody not just the success of negotiation, but the unshakable belief that Israel will always choose life, no matter how heavy the burden. It is this enduring commitment to choose life in the face of peril, to rebuild in the aftermath of tragedy, and to hope even when hope feels distant, that defines Israel's path forward. In this unwavering belief lies the nation's true strength, and it is this belief that will carry it through the trials that lie ahead.